As a remodeling contractor, I'm always looking for more efficient, better ways to do my projects. I've been using Warmup radiant heat products for a long time on my remodels, and I recently came across their DCM-PRO anti-fracture membrane and electric heating cable system. The combination of these two give me a way faster way to install radiant heat and then subsequently tile. So in the past, I would use either the heat mats or the strips, and I'd have to put that down first, then I would have to cover it with thinset, then later come back and tile, return again for grout. It was a process. The DCM-PRO system is way faster. It's faster than the mats, the cable strips. It allows for anti-fracture protection, but it also allows you to immediately tile right after if you want to. So the DCM-PRO, it's 1/4 inches thick, and it comes either as a roll or in sheets. In a roll, it covers up to 150 square feet. In sheets, it comes in a box of 10, covers 80 square feet. It is designed for wood or concrete subfloors using any tile adhesive. It's a super easy system. It is design rated, which means it's rated for an anti-fracture, and it also allows, the way it's set up, more adhesive to connect with the cable, to actually embed the cable, which actually helps distribute the heat better. You can use modified, unmodified, or even self-leveling mortars, SLU, with this, and that would allow you to do, say, installation of small format tiles or other types of flooring, maybe glue down wood or something like that. It's a custom design cable, meaning that you can design around obstacles and things as you need. It's compatible with a bunch of uncoupling membranes such as Schluter. It will work with Dietrich heat, Prodeso heat, what's the other one? FlexTherm, FlexSnap system, Heat Matrix, and obviously it'll work with the Warmup Pro Membrane as well. In the video that I'm showing you here, I'm using the Warmup DCM-PRO Membrane. Warmup recommends a spacing that produces no more than 15 watts per square foot. And that's heat input into the floor. And basically that results in 3 inches spacing approximately. That's usually the rule of thumb I go with. When embedding the cable into the mat studs, you want to ensure that your minimum bending radius for the heat wire is no more than 1 inch. And you absolutely want to follow the manufacturer's instructions and guidelines. So I'm talking about this product and my experience with it, but you want to follow those guidelines. You also want to check the resistance of the heating cable before, during, and after installation, and that's to ensure that the cable's not damaged. They tell you that a tolerance of plus or minus 5 degrees is allowed. So let's talk about my experience with installing this membrane first. Basically what you do is you measure the length of the mat to suit the room. You can use a utility knife or scissors. It is super easy to cut. I recommend that you dry fit your mat to the room first before spreading any thinset, because it just gets messy. So what I do is, when I was laying it out, I tried to lay out the mat so that the studs lined up and you have straight wire lines. Well, I'm here to tell you that that does not always happen, but the mats are forgiving. You just loop around and keep going. If you look in the video, you'll see I had to offset my cable a little bit. The goal is to keep the heat cables in line and in place so you get the most efficient coverage and keeping that 3-inch spacing. When you're gluing down the mats, that's easy too. You just apply some modified thinset to the substrate, use a 1/4 inch notch trowel, position your mat into place, and then basically embed it right down into the thinset. Use a float to press it down and really get it down there. One tip that I found was useful for me was I used a black permanent marker to mark on the floor where the mats went, and I also used, and also where things maybe might be permanent fixtures so you don't want the heat to go. And I also used a black marker to mark the mat to cut it, because I had an angled wall. Now let's talk about the DCM-PRO heating cable. That's the easiest part of the whole system. The heating cable just embeds right between the mat studs, really easy. I went back and forth in a serpentine pattern or any pattern needed to go around objects. It's custom. When installing the cable, be careful not to cross any other cables or another run, or cross over your cold wire, the black wire, or that white floor sensor. Crossing over lines like that, it's going to damage or overheat the cable. Also, you don't want to cut your heating cable or install it under permanent fixtures, or even use metal staples or things like that, because that could damage the cable. So What I usually do is I use tape to install my cold lead and anything that might be popping up. Tape works well. I just use blue painter's tape and I take it off when I'm thin setting it over. The cold joint, there's a big joint on the cold wire where it meets the heating wire. That has to be embedded in the floor in thin set. And you'll see in my video that I actually have blue tape over it. That tape comes off when I thin set over it, but that keeps everything down. One pro tip, when you're, I'm trying to think how to describe this, but the cable has a mid-span mark, and it's just a piece of white tape. So when you get to the mid-span mark, that tells you that you're right in the middle of your cable run, and that's a good time to stop and look and say, where am I? You should be right in the middle of your room at that point. It's a great feature to let you know if you're on track with your current spacing, and basically allows you to make changes if needed. You might need to go bigger or smaller in your spacing a little bit to finish the install. There is a floor sensor that you have to install with these systems, and the floor sensor is used for temperature regulation of the floor surface. It goes in the floor, and the end probe wire, it contains a capped sensor, and basically you want to center that in between two heating cables, approximately 12 inches into the heated area, the floor space. The sensor should not touch or cross over the heating cables because it'll screw up the readings. One tip that I might want to tell you guys about is that you might find it necessary to chisel out short channels in the subfloor to either bury the sensor or the cold wire lead where the cold wire meets the blue heating cable. Before chiseling that area, obviously make sure your heating cable and unheated lead and floor probes and all that stuff is out of the way for chiseling. I used a hammer and a chisel and a utility knife. But I've also used on other installs, I've used a router for this purpose, but you can't always get it up against the wall, but a router works great. Once you're done, you can place your floor probe or whatever you need into that channel and you can secure it with fixing tape. As far as electrical requirements for these systems, Warmup, the Warmup system has to be connected to a ground fault circuit interrupt. And a lot of the thermostats that Warmup sells have these, but we always have our electrician run a home run dedicated circuit for our heating mats, 2 plastic conduits, and he separates the cold lead from the sensor wire, which is a good practice to do. I want to talk to you also about thermal insulation. It's important to note that insulation levels of a floor can affect both the performance and running costs of under tile heating. Using a heating cable without any thermal insulation can sometimes take hours to heat the room up, whereas a system with thermal insulation can take sometimes less than an hour. So, excuse me, if the Warmup heating cable is being installed onto a concrete base or concrete subfloor, I absolutely recommend that you do a layer of insulation. Warmup sells boards, but you can use other boards under the heating cable, because otherwise the concrete will just suck the heat down. The thermal insulation reflects the heat upward instead of allowing it to penetrate in the subfloor, that's all. And it basically is going to improve your warm-up time and your running costs for controlling that floor heat. Warmup recommends using a UL certified programmable thermostat. And the thermostat should be designed for use with underfloor heating to control the loose heating cables. On our installation, we're using a 4IE smart Wi-Fi thermostat. Those thermostats are awesome. They learn the heat up and cool down patterns of your house, automatically set the most efficient temperatures, and they can actually reduce usage by up to 25%. The 4IE thermostat is simple to use, intuitive, and uses your smartphone as a remote interface. So as a final thought, radiant heat is an absolutely efficient way to heat and to add supplement heat. It's now an absolute permanent solution in my toolbox, my remodeling toolbox, and I'm always referring customers to it. Probably the most attractive advantage, though, to the Warmup DCM-PRO system is its ease of installation and speed of project completion. The DCM-PRO leaves me, or I should say saves me, from multiple return trips to a project. And as I've always said, time saved is money earned. I'm Rob Robillard. Please consider subscribing to our channel, and we'll see you at the next review. Take care.